one thing that was really disturbing, because I've been doing this for over 35 years, and I currently work in law enforcement. I'm with the Division of Gaming as a criminal investigator, but one of the things that just really bothers me, and it should bother the public, is the inability of the organization to solve major crimes. They have not solved any.
Not one.
Not one. I mean, when we look at all the homicides, when we say, oh, there's not very many, but the homicides that we've had, how many solved? 0. When we look at the arsonists, right? 0. So when we look at my opponent's, when he talks about his greatest accomplishments, he talks about doing patrols in the residential areas. That's an accomplishment. That's not an accomplishment, that's your job, right? So our inability in terms of the organization to solve major crimes is really disturbing to me. I mean, God forbid that you are a victim of a major crime. Because he has shown, in terms of his leadership and his training and mentoring his organization, that we can't solve it. And that's crazy. That's embarrassing. The question was about the arsonist that the current administration had announced a few months ago that they had a suspect identified, and then no arrest ever happened. What I do know is that there were multiple suspects in that investigation, and they didn't have enough probable cause to issue an arrest warrant for whatever suspect that he may or may not have been talking about. To me, it's a little bit embarrassing that you come out and you identify that you have a suspect, and then you can't deliver on the arrest of the suspect. You probably don't want to say that unless you know that you can effect an arrest. And so that's an embarrassment. But that's one of the things that we talk about is that their inability to solve major crime. And not all has to do, sometimes it has to do with lack of resources, but they have the ability to bring in CBI to help with some of their forensic issues. We can contract with El Paso County and Colorado Springs to do forensics and that kind of stuff. So there should not be an excuse, right, when we don't have the money or we don't have that kind of stuff. That should just, and that's just, again, a lack of training. One of the things that we want to do to address that issue is we want to institute core training for the organization, whether it's detentions, patrol, investigations, and supervisors, that we have a core training program for them just for a basis, to create that base knowledge for them. And then continuing education for them. Now, people say, well, Mark, how are you going to do that at $4,500 a year? And that's difficult. Well, we know, and I didn't write it down. We have this organization in Colorado that are federally funded, and it's a training organization that provides law enforcement training, and I forget the acronym of their name, so I'm kind of embarrassed. However, the president of that organization works for the Division of Gaming, where I work, and Bill Vidmar was telling me, he says, Mark, he goes, I get $600,000 a year to provide training for law enforcement officials in the state of Colorado. And he says, what's a shame is that I have to return approximately $200,000 a year because agencies don't access my training. And I said, that's not going to be a problem, Bill. When we take office, we will make sure that we spend all your money. And what's nice about that organization is they have a training manual, that has classes that you can kind of go through and pick and choose. But what's really nice about the organization, say that I want to create a class that's not in their book. I just call them and say, hey, Bill, this is what I want you guys to do. I want you to create me a class that covers these areas and address these areas. They will create and develop the curriculum. They will send it back to us for our approval. And then once we approve it, they will come implement it, and they will come to us and train our people for free. But it's about accessing, right? We know that, I'll give you another example, and it's really frustrating. There is a tremendous amount of people in our community that have the education and the knowledge to assist in training our personnel. Okay? So, for instance, I personally, of my 35 years in law enforcement, 21 years was spent specializing in domestic violence and sexual assault. I created curriculum and have taught internationally as well as nationally in those fields. I have created protocols, trained thousands of lawyers and judges, law enforcement officials throughout this country and elsewhere. So when I first got here, I told my wife, I said, you know, I feel kind of guilty that I don't do that anymore, right? I spent all that time developing that knowledge and sharing it. I said, so, you know, I think I'll ask the local organizations, you know, that I can create whatever they want and provide some training for them. You know, I mean, I used to be compensated quite well when I traveled across the United States and outside this country teaching those issues. And so I volunteered my services. And when I did, at that time, it was to Cripple Creek Police Department. And at the time, their chief of police said, well, you know, Mark, no thank you. We have our expert. Our expert's handled like 50 cases in her career. And I said, well, you know, I'm sorry you feel that way, Chief, but, you know, my men handled 5,000 cases annually, you know, for 21 years. So it was interesting to me that they didn't want the training, or they thought their training was adequate. And of course, so I know that there's other professionals within our community that we can access that, you know, that training resource, and they would be more than happy to do it for us for free. So it's about identifying and you know, and getting these people to help.